Ahead of an anticipated 2024 re-election announcement, President Biden spoke today to members of the International Association of Firefighters, the first major union to endorse his 2020 presidential campaign, and an endorsement he's likely to court again. And his domestic agenda is giving some preview of what policy items are top of mind for a re-election campaign. Speaking in Selma, Alabama this weekend, the president highlighted the threats to voting rights. He called on Congress to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, named for the late Georgia congressman and civil rights leader. Take a listen.
In January, I signed the Electoral Count Reform Act to protect the will of the people and the peaceful transfer of power. But we know that we must get the votes in Congress to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. I made it clear I will not let a filibuster obstruct the sacred right to vote, the right of any other right to vote from there.
Meanwhile, we have new reporting now from NBC News that there are no plans right now for President Biden to visit the site of the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, after his potential 2024 rival Donald Trump visited last month and accused the Biden administration of a lackluster response. That reporting from Peter Nicholas, Monica Alba, and myself earlier today. Joining me now is NBC News White House correspondent Allie Raffa. Allie, let's start with what we heard from the president who was speaking to the firefighters union. He is casting himself as the most pro-union president in history. What were your key takeaways from what we heard from him?
Yeah, Kristen, you and I both know how much President Biden loves to talk to union workers, to firefighters, blue-collar workers, and you could almost feel the admiration and the respect that this group and President Biden have for each other. Even watching this on TV, this almost felt like a campaign event that this union would have for him back in 2019, shortly after they endorsed him. This speech that he gave was all about loyalty. The president talking about all the different times throughout his life he's relied on firefighters, how he plans to have their backs for the next 2 years of his presidency and potentially beyond that. He talked about providing more financial and economic aid to them, as well as even medical aid, calling for more funding for their retirement benefits, as well as more medical protections, especially for those firefighters that have been exposed to toxic chemicals on the job. So this speech from the president today still delivered in a presidential capacity, as he's not a 2024 candidate, but it definitely had those undertones of a campaign speech as he tries to solidify support from this union as early as possible ahead of that expected 2024 announcement, Kristen.
And Allie, I want to ask you about this new reporting. President Biden said when he was visiting Capitol Hill last week that, yes, he does intend to go to East Palestine. We've been drilling down, talking to sources. At this point in time, no immediate plans for him to go to East Palestine. Talk, if you would, about the complicated politics surrounding this and when, if ever, we might see a presidential visit.
Yeah, Kristen, a lot of layers to this. Remember, the original reason why White House officials were saying, both officially and unofficially, why he wasn't going to East Palestine in the wake of this disaster was both he and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, was that they didn't want to distract from the ongoing cleanup efforts. They didn't want to take any resources away from the community to be able to provide for this presidential visit. They didn't want this to possibly look like political theater in the president visiting. But the White House is now not exactly saying why they're not on the same page with the president. As you mentioned, the president said last week he does intend to go to East Palestine, but the White House is now saying that there are no plans on the books. There's no urgency in getting this plan on the book, even after increasing pressure over the last month from Republicans and Democrats, both on the state and the federal level, even from community members of East Palestine. The White House now really not explaining why they're on separate pages, but you can imagine how confusing this is, because, you know, the president has pledged his support for East Palestine. He's spoken with state leaders and said he'd provide whatever support they needed. He's even supporting this recent rail legislation for more rail safety in the wake of this disaster. And you and I have seen how he thrives in settings where he gets to meet with community members face to face and offer his support support with them. The White House official is telling us that this event could possibly happen tacked on to another visit to a nearby area. But right now, you and I both know how important it is for leaders to meet the moment, and that moment may have passed for the president as of right now, Kristen.
Allie, Raffa, great reporting. As always, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.